What's up, guys? You are watching Fight Feed. I just got off the phone with my friend Diego Lopes. I congratulated him on his amazing second round TKO KO finish over Jean Silva. This was one of the best fights that I've ever witnessed. One of the most chaotic fights that I've ever witnessed. Guys, the moment when Diego took Jean down in round one and he got into full mount, started landing some elbows. Jean was, defending, did the, the wraparound of Diego's abdomen, and then Diego stops and he just looks up and he smiles and the entire crowd erupts. Guys, in that moment, I'm like, this could age extremely well, or it could age like milk, because I'm like, that was the coldest shit ever. How Diego just was in the moment, just feeling it, looks up, smiles, the whole crowd goes nuts. And almost immediately after that, Diego and Jean are standing again. And then Jean starts to actually land quite a few shots before the end of round one. I was very scared because obviously I picked Diego, and guys, I did extremely horrible on picks. I actually tied Lucas Tracy, which I love Lucas, but he's not the best at predictions. And so to tie Lucas, I'm now in that same boat. But I was very scared, especially going into round two, because as we got into round two, it seemed like Jean Silva had gathered his wits and actually took over the fight at the start of that round. Diego does not move his head, guys. And guys, it all made sense though when I spoke with Diego, because he explained to me that the game plan for this fight was to pretend as though he's in the pit at Warped Tour for the main event or the headliner, and just fucking go all out and throw until you can't throw anymore. And don't worry about what comes your way, because you're going to eat it and you're going to return with even more vitriol, pain. And that's exactly what happened, guys. A few things I want to, call out in this video. So I want to talk about, obviously, the finish, which was outstanding. I don't think it was a lucky finish. I think that Diego, this is something that I really appreciate about Diego in this fight, is I actually started to see him. So first of all, when I went into this fight, guys, I said Diego's keys to success are tagging up that lead leg early on against Jean Silva, because if you've watched Diego's fights, I did an entire breakdown. You guys can go and watch that breakdown. It actually goes through a lot of Diego's best moments in previous fights. He has a very good calf and leg kick that he throws quite a bit. Now, if you watch my breakdown, I'm going to be doing another breakdown of one of the best fights of 2025 in Volkanovski versus Diego Lopes. A big reason I feel Diego did not have as much success against Volk was that he could not get that leg kick or calf kick off, in that Volk, not only was his movement too much, but he actually saw it coming quite a bit and was able to evade a lot of those leg strikes. And so Diego had a lot less success against Volk for that reason, because he's not able to slow that movement down of Volk. Now, very different against Jean Silva. I did say going into this fight that Diego would likely have struggles with the fact that Jean Silva is basically the same build as Volk, short, stocky, but keeps a wide stance, always laterally moving, and has solid footwork. And because of that, I thought Diego could have some struggles. Obviously, it could have gone one of two ways. He could have struggles because that style is just difficult for him to manage, or having that 5-round championship experience against Volk, Diego's actually able to kind of adjust some of those holes in the game that he probably noticed during the Volk fight. I do think we saw a kind of a in between the two of those areas, right? I think Diego had a lot more success, obviously, given the result. But if you actually watch it, he did land a lot of those heavy leg kicks. And then another core piece of success that I said Diego could have is driven by him not playing Mr. Patty Cake, high-fiving every other punch with Jean Silva, right? That was a huge component to me saying that if Diego cannot let those mind games in, right? And dude, Diego, I saw Guru say that he felt Diego was playing too much into it. I actually disagree with that. I think Diego did this perfectly. At the start of the fight, if you guys were paying attention, Jean Silva goes like this, right? He's high five before we fight. And you know what Diego did? Diego's hopping like this. And this is the coldest shit ever. Diego's hopping. He's got that fucking stash. And he said, he nods his head yes, but he goes, one time, one. And I love that, because that right there said to me that Diego's not playing games. He's like, I will tap your hand one time and that's it. And what we saw is in moments before Diego got the finish, there were several times that Jean Silva tried to reach out for a high five, and Diego returned in kind with a punch. And that is exactly what I said he should do. Look, I don't know that Diego saw my video, but, you know, we are in contact. I did speak with him. And so he did say, you know, like, I wasn't going to play games. The idea was I was going to go out there and pretend I'm at Warped Tour, get into the pit, favorite song goes on, and suddenly there's a blackout. And it's not because he got knocked out. He was in the moment, guys. The finish was outstanding. Okay. Jean Silva had a ton of success. This is not a fraud check, guys. This is more so if we want to really tally up what occurred in this fight, it was 1-1, right? Like, before the finish occurred, it was a 1-1 fight, because Jean Silva had clearly gotten ahead and just totally took over round 2. Now, obviously he's finishing round 2, so he really doesn't win that round. But if we were to stop it up into the finish, Jean Silva's round is round 2 and round 1 is clearly Diego's. So in my opinion, it's a 1-1 fight at that point. Now, people might think it was lucky, but I think that what Diego did well, in addition to the things I've already called out, is while getting tagged by Jean Silva, I saw Diego Lopes actually start picking up techniques that were landing on him and then using them against Jean Silva. So my first point on that is Jean Silva does this really cool, like, lead in elbow where he's like this and like strikes the elbow down on the top of the head. And it's a very vicious elbow. I love the technique. Very creative. I've never seen Diego throw that elbow. Okay. Mid-fight, round 2, Diego's throwing those elbows at Jean Silva. And it was after Jean Silva had been doing it to him. Okay. So he picks up that. And prior to that, Jean Silva's throwing and spamming, spinning elbows, spinning kicks. And so I believe Diego sees this coming at him. And it's like he's gathered the data. And as he's kind of retreating, Jean's coming forward. He uses that same technique, that spinning elbow. And that's the brutal elbow, guys. Like, Diego, he showed me those elbows, man. He's got those fucking forehead splitters, man. And so he spins, connects. I think it connected on Jean's like orbital bone. Now, I'm not a doctor, guys, but if you watch this finishing sequence, you can't really see it land. And I'm going to do a breakdown on this this week, but you don't see it land, but you see Jean drop. And dude, it was on the one side of the face. This is where Diego Lopes deserves all the flowers, okay? People want to talk about fight IQ. How about finishing IQ, okay? I've seen fighters hurt a fighter to the body. That fighter drops down. They're hurt to the body. And the fighter who's got the aggression and is going for the finish punches that fighter in the head instead of the body. Diego Lopes not only knocks Jean Silva down with the spinning elbow, seems surprised that it happened, right? He turns, he's like, oh, fuck, he dropped. And he instantly is throwing some vicious ground and pound at the target area where he just landed this spinning elbow. And in hindsight, guys, like, when you see that land, you see the blood, and then you see how Diego throws those punches, and only seconds later, when the fight is stopped and Jean Silva turns and you see the damage on this man's face, that is when I'm like, Diego might have some of the best finishing IQ I've ever seen, because he went right towards that target area. And I think when he landed those concussive ground and pound blows to the fucking mangled portion of Jean Silva's face, that was all she wrote. And that's why when we saw Jean Silva try to stand up, he literally stood up and like fell back down because he was completely out of it. His face was mangled. He got fucked up bad. But guys, this is not a fraud check situation. This is a situation where I think that Jean Silva let things get to the best of him in this fight, maybe change his style up. But it's hard to say, guys, because Jean Silva really did. He rocked Diego worse than I've ever seen Diego rocked in the UFC. And I think he was just going for the kill and just got caught. Like, honestly, I would liken this to a Pereira versus Adesanya too, right? Like, Pereira had every reason to believe in that fight. You know, he's got Izzy on the ropes and he's kind of getting into his final form in as a finisher and gets caught, right? It's not to say that Diego is just levels and leagues ahead of Jean Silva. I think that the skill level based on this fight is very even, you know, up into the finish. Like everything was back and forth, really. But guys, this is such a humbling experience, I think, for Jean Silva, because Jean Silva did come in with that aura, the fighting nerds, and he's going to be the one, right? And just like Rufy was going to be the one. And like, I think that it's easy for us to shit on them. But at the end of the day, guys, there's not really a reason to shit on the fighting nerds because all of them are still, in the top 10 of their divisions. Okay. So we could sit here and be like, oh, they're frauds, but they're all in the top 10 and they're all here to stay. I mean, I really believe that. Who is beating Jean Silva outside of Diego Lopes? We'll have to see. Does this change his game completely? I'm not sure. But what I would say is Jean Silva is probably going to get better from this, I think. And I think that the fighting nerds are still going to be very good talent within their divisions. Now, my final notes on this overall situation is I'm super fucking happy for Diego Lopes, one of my favorite fighters, and just love that he's a humble G about everything. He's not a guy who wants to talk shit. He's a guy who says, I respect you. Let's get out there. We'll see who wins. And that you got to love. You got to love a guy like that. And here's what I think about this situation. I think that in terms of the next fight, Diego's number 2 in the division. If Diego has to fight one more time because the UFC wants that, my opinion, guys, is that Diego Lopes should not just be given Yair Rodriguez, because I think that this is going to sound crazy maybe for some of you, but I think it's actually unfair now that Yair gets a chance at Diego when he had the opportunity to fight Diego on that fight card, and he, for whatever reason, was not able to. I think Yair had mentioned being injured, so I have sympathy for that. I understand if he's injured, and I know Movsar's injured too. So if that's the case, there's a good reason, right, for him not to be able to fight Diego on this card. But I actually think it's not fair to Diego for Yair to get that crack at Diego and maybe somehow getting a fluke win and then getting shot into title contention. That's just my opinion. What I think should happen now, let's just assume there's a couple paths here, right? Let's assume that Volk is in fact fighting Lerone Murphy in defending his belt. I think in an ideal world, right, you have that fight occur when, let's say that's going to happen in December, right? Let's say that's the December pay-per-view card. Okay. So you have Volk versus Lerone Murphy. Now, the ideal situation there for me would be that Volk defends against Lerone, and in that defense, he retires. Okay. So he beats Lerone Murphy, decision, whatever it is. Volk retires on top, goes off into the sunset. And now you got a vacated featherweight belt. I think the best situation is you do that fight. And then I know Jean Silva is going to need some time off. So let's do that fight between Volk, Lerone. Let's say Volk wins, right? And so Lerone is kind of now out of the title picture because he lost. Diego's kind of still chilling. What I say we do is you give Jean Silva and Yair Rodriguez the opportunity to fight one another when they're both healthy again, right? So we'll say start of the year, right? So let's say January of 2026. Have those two fight. Ideally, if they're both healthy, you have Jean Silva Yair fight in December, as a co-main or as a featured prelim on the Volk Lerone Murphy card, assuming that happens, right? So you could do that, and then whoever wins that bout, you have them fight Diego for the vacant belt in the division. Okay. And honestly, the way I see that going is Jean Silva probably dispatches of Yair Rodriguez, and you get that solid rematch between Diego and Jean Silva. Now, I will say I'm that's not the most ideal situation, because I actually feel like because of how close this fight was between Diego and Jean, I worry about Diego going up against Jean Silva for the title, because I feel like I just love Diego, guys, and I want him to win, and I want him to be the champ. So I just don't like that. I would rather see Diego up against somebody else, but not because the fight wouldn't be fun. It's more so I just want to see Diego win, and the win against Jean Silva was convincing enough, but it's like it was a close fight, right? And I don't know how that always plays out. So that would be one ideal situation. Now, let's say we have the situation where Lerone Murphy somehow beats Volk, and now Volk, is retiring anyways, and now Lerone's champ. So regardless, I think that Diego is right there, guys. I think that Diego could have one more fight, or perhaps Diego could be the next guy up. Now, the ideal situation for me, guys, is you give Jean Silva either Movsar or you give Jean Silva Yair Rodriguez. I don't think that Diego should have to fight one of them to get a shot at the title. He did just get a shot at the title, but winning in this event the way that he did, being number 2, there's no one else above him but Movsar, who he's already fought. And because of that, I think obviously Movsar could be next in line. So if that's the case, I know Movsar is injured though. So if that thing doesn't work out, right, maybe you do Movsar versus winner of that goes up against Diego, and then we have our next title fight. And so I just think regardless, I think Diego is right there, even if it is one more fight. I do think you could argue his case for getting a shot at the belt, because it's just, there's the only other person above him is Movsar. So it's like, sure, Diego could go out and rematch Movsar for the belt, but I feel like that's also unfair because at this point, I think Movsar has earned that crack at the belt as well. So I don't know what way the UFC is going to go, but I am just so happy for Diego Lopes, and I'm super excited to see him get a win in that fashion. Now, because I got that one right, I guess I have a 100% pick rate because it was the main event. So yeah, overall, guys, great night of fights. I really enjoyed it. Even though did horrible on picks, a lot of the people I picked just either lost or, and what a stark difference to Noche last year, right? 2025, we have an undefeated Noche card. I don't like that though, because Alessandro Costa, if you guys didn't pay attention, he and Diego Lopes have the same story. They both moved to Mexico at 19 and have been training there since 19 and basically called it a home. And the commentators have just completely gone over that and said all of the Mexican fighters are 5-0, including Diego. And it's like, you guys, if we're going to include Diego in that category because he's chosen Mexico as his home, then you kind of have to include Costa, who lost, right? But even then, if you include that, they did absolutely 1,000% better than they did last year. I'm pretty sure at Noche last year, only like Diego won. You had Diego, and then you had like Rolando Rodriguez, who got a robbery win over Ode Osborne. I think it was only like 2 or 3 of them out of like 6 or 7 won last year. So this year it was a stark difference. The Mexican pride and fighting ability was on pure display for us to enjoy and be spoiled by. And so they all had really good fights, and not much to write home about in terms of, like, it was convincing in each one. I feel like I don't think that there were any ones that where you're like, I don't know about that. I think it was all pretty convincing in terms of their ability in those fights and getting the win. So overall, I think it was a success, and I'm just excited to see what happens now for the featherweight division because things are a bit shaken up. But I do think that Jean Silva will be back, guys. It's not fraud checked. Like, this is a solid high level fight between 2 very skilled finishers. And guys, I don't see a world where Jean Silva and Diego Lopes are locked in a cage and that fight goes the distance. I just don't see that ever happening. Given their fighting styles, I can't see it. Let me know what you guys thought of that fight. Make sure you comment below all of your thoughts. I would love to hear from you guys. Give this video a like, and please subscribe to Fite Feed if not already, so you can stay on top of all the new MMA content. Thanks, guys.